Today we're talking about UFC fighters whose words or actions have been widely condemned as racist.
Dance for me, son! Dance for me!
It's a controversial topic, but if you follow this sport,
this is my African brother right here. Let's go. What's up?
You know that trash talk can cross ugly lines. Let's get to it. Colby Covington built his persona on insults and political theatrics, and that act has repeatedly crossed into outright racism. In September 2020, during a Fight Week media day, he referred to welterweight champion Kamaru Usman as coming from a little tribe.
You get a call from frickin' your little tribe?
And joked that Usman must have used smoke signals to take a call. In the same appearance, he went after Tyron Woodley, who was supporting Black Lives Matter, calling him a communist and a Marxist, and saying he stood for criminals. He went on to call the Black Lives Matter movement a sham and branded protesters terrorists and animals. Covington has also targeted Brazilians. After beating Demian Maia in Brazil in 2017, he grabbed the microphone and shouted,
Brazil, you're a dog! All you filthy animals!
He has described fighters from African countries as coming from third world treating entire nations as props in his marketing. He rarely criticizes an opponent without tying it to a stereotype about skin color or nationality. His comments landed during a period of intense racial tension in the United States. As protests followed the killings of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and athletes across sports spoke about systemic racism, Covington went in the opposite direction, ridiculing Black Lives Matter as a terrorist organization and using his platform to push right-wing talking points. He took phone calls from then-President Donald Trump on live television, wore MAGA-style hats to weigh-ins, and welcomed far-right influencers into his gym. Fighters of color said he was leveraging racial tension for personal gain, and his approach earned him conservative media appearances and a loyal fan segment. The backlash inside the sport was strong. Featherweight Hakeem Dawodu said comments like, "Covington's divide people," and admitted he took offense. Middleweight champion Israel Adesanya pointed out that the UFC would police walkout songs but not direct insults aimed at entire nations. Bantamweight Sijara Eubanks called Covington's remarks flat-out racist and disgusting. Other fighters asked why the promotion tolerated attacks on nationality while fining athletes for minor uniform infractions. Despite the criticism, the UFC took no significant action. Dana White defended Covington's free speech and said he didn't think a line had been crossed. Fighters noted that the company had punished athletes for far less, including sponsor issues and dress code violations, which made it feel like racist trash talk was acceptable as long as it sold fights. Covington's defenders argue that he is just playing a character, claiming his career only took off once he embraced the brash persona, and that nothing he says is racially charged. He calls the Brazil comments a way to get noticed and insists people should lighten up. But the pattern is clear. In a sport with champions from all over the world, he repeatedly uses stereotypes as shorthand for trash talk. He chooses words like tribe, animals, and third world not to describe fighting styles, but to invoke inferiority. Even if he treats it as performance, the people he targets live with the fallout as those stereotypes are echoed by fans online and in arenas. His case shows how far a promotion will go to protect a controversial star. No suspensions, no fines, sponsors largely silent, and pay-per-view numbers spiking whenever he fought a champion from a country he'd insulted. He remains the most cited example of racist trash talk in MMA. Sean Strickland might be the most polarizing fighter in the UFC today, and he often sounds like he's speaking from conviction rather than playing a character. In November 2024, he made headlines by calling Chinese people animals, savages, and the worst tourists in the world, and saying China produces bad Asians who don't understand freedom. The comments came during a live stream and drew immediate condemnation. Bantamweight Song Yadong, one of the UFC's biggest Chinese stars, invited Strickland to visit his hometown to see real Chinese culture and called the remarks discriminatory and ignorant. Strickland doubled down, insisting he was telling the truth, accusing critics of being too sensitive and refusing to apologize. He had previously told reporters he wouldn't visit China because he didn't want to get sick from dirty people. Those statements fit a broader pattern. In a 2021 interview, He admitted he went through what he called
neo-Nazi white supremacist phase when I was younger.
He was expelled from high school for what he described as a hate crime and said he was headed down a violent path before MMA pulled him out of it. While he claims to have left those beliefs behind, his recent language suggests he still flirts with extremism. He regularly rants about hating weak men, praises authoritarian leaders, and has used homophobic slurs toward reporters. After UFC 293, he misgendered and mocked a journalist who questioned him about vaccines. When criticized, he swings between apologizing and attacking, saying society has become too soft. Strickland presents himself as brutally honest in a sport full of fake personas. In media scrums, he has said he would love nothing more than to kill an opponent in the octagon, and laments that modern rules make that impossible. He brags about beating up strangers at his gym. On social media, he frequently poses with guns and militia symbols, praises armed groups, and mixes that imagery with racist and homophobic slurs. To many observers, it looks less like edgy humor and more like a public invitation to extremist subcultures. He insists he is misunderstood. When asked about his past, he says he was angry and directionless, and that MMA gave him discipline. He argues that slurs are just part of his blue-collar vocabulary, and says he doesn't hate any particular race. He points out that he also mocks white people and other nationalities, claiming his insults are equal opportunity. Dana White backs him by saying fighters are free to speak their minds, and that Strickland is a wild card who sells tickets. But calling all Chinese people animals or boasting about a neo-Nazi phase goes well beyond standard trash talk about an opponent's skills. The UFC's tolerance has consequences. After Strickland's rant about China, Song Yadong said he felt disrespected not just as an athlete, but as a representative of his country. Other Asian fighters questioned why the company allowed a top contender to disparage an entire nation while it punished minor rule violations. Commentators warned that such rhetoric could damage the UFC's growth in China, a market the promotion has heavily targeted. Calls for a suspension or fine went nowhere. Instead, Strickland was booked in another high-profile fight. When he later lost a decision to Jared Cannonier, welterweight Bilal Muhammad called him a racist little clown on social media. Strickland brushed it off. Despite the backlash, he remains a fixture in the middleweight division. In 2023, he upset Israel Adesanya to win the title, then lost it in a rematch months later. The UFC promotes his fights by highlighting his unpredictability, and he continues to get headline slots. He claims he has been canceled, even as he sells pay-per-views and earns six-figure paychecks. Whatever he believes privately, the record of his words, from neo-Nazi admissions to racist and homophobic slurs, speaks for itself. Conor McGregor's racism controversy didn't start in the cage, but on the global stage of a boxing promotion. In July 2017, he and Floyd Mayweather embarked on a world tour to hype their cross-sport megafight. During their stop in the United States, McGregor looked at Mayweather, a black man, and told him to "dance for me, boy."
Dance for me, boy!
The phrase has deep roots in slavery and segregation, where white men would command black men to dance for their amusement. When confronted about it, McGregor shrugged and said he meant no disrespect, insisting that in his native Dublin boy was just a casual term. Days later, in London, he attempted to head off criticism by declaring, "I'm half black from the belly button down," making a crude sexual joke. In another interview, he referenced a scene from Rocky III where black characters jogged on the beach, calling them dancing monkeys. Mayweather and his team were livid. They accused him of racism, pointing out that the combination of "dance for me, boy" and "monkeys" evoked centuries of dehumanization. McGregor attempted to defend himself with humor. He told a crowd that he loved all the black women and claimed he couldn't be racist because he was a quarter black thanks to his unseen genitalia. He laughed at the backlash and said people were too sensitive. In interviews after the tour, he insisted he was mocking the characters in Rocky rather than black people, and that the phrase "dance for me, boy" was common in Irish slang. Dana White backed him up, telling reporters he knew McGregor personally and didn't believe he harbored racist views. White argued that both fighters were throwing insults and that the focus on McGregor's words was unfair. Nonetheless, the optics were awful. Even if he didn't intend harm, telling a black opponent to dance and calling black men monkeys sits on a razor's edge between ignorance and outright bigotry. The tour sold out arenas and generated millions of of views online, and many fans cheered along with McGregor's insults. Critics argued that by laughing, audiences endorsed harmful stereotypes. Commentators pointed out that McGregor was a white man using racist tropes to belittle a black man, while Mayweather's insults mostly targeted McGregor's fighting ability or national pride. Sarah Spain and other ESPN personalities noted that the trash talk descended from hype into bigotry and that the promoters did nothing to rein it in. Mayweather himself leaned into the race angle, calling McGregor a racist and urging fans to tune in to see him punished. The fight went on and McGregor made tens of millions of dollars. He never issued a proper apology. Instead, he told reporters afterwards that he respected Mayweather and that if anyone was offended, it was their problem. There were other moments that hinted at a blind spot. In 2018, McGregor posted a tweet during Black History Month showing a dark-skinned doll and referring to it as a monkey. The tweet was quickly deleted after backlash, and he issued a statement saying there was no racial intent. In 2021, he launched a whiskey promotion that featured him wearing traditional Mexican attire on Cinco de Mayo. Critics felt he was appropriating culture for marketing. He also shared a photo of himself with a mustache and sombrero, captioning it with a stereotypical accent. Each time he shrugged off criticism, explaining that his heritage as an Irishman made him an underdog too. Whether he truly didn't understand the connotations or simply ignored them for attention is an open question. What's certain is that his track record shows a willingness to lean into stereotypes when it suits him. He may not use explicit slurs as often as some of his peers, but his choice of words and props reveals a pattern of provocation over reflection. At the same time, McGregor's fame shows how forgiving the fight game can be. Sponsors left him in droves after the April 2018 bus attack in Brooklyn, yet he headlined a record-breaking pay-per-view later that year. Judges gave him the benefit of the doubt after assault accusations, and fans still chant his name whenever he appears. He has learned that apologies aren't required when you sell tickets. By 2025, he was teasing a return to the cage, posting training videos and promising to reclaim lost glory. The lingering stain of his racially loaded comments doesn't seem to threaten his earning power. For young fighters watching, that's a mixed message. Controversy may sell, and consequences are minimal when you're a star. As long as pay-per-view numbers spike, promoters appear willing to overlook insults that would get others fined or fired. That dynamic isn't unique to McGregor, but his case is the most visible example of how fame can shield fighters from accountability. McGregor's case also illustrates how quickly bigotry can be normalized when it's wrapped in spectacle. The World Tour looked like a carnival where anything went. Many fans treated the racist lines as part of the show, laughing and repeating them. Critics were drowned out by the roar of the crowd. The UFC and Mayweather promotions made a fortune while the fighters traded slurs on stage. In retrospect, the event looks like a snapshot of how far combat sports promoters will go to generate buzz. McGregor may not have repeated those specific lines in later years, but he never issued a sincere apology for them. As of 2025, his comments remain part of his public image, an Irish fighter who turned to racist insults to hype the biggest fight of his career. Whenever lists of fighters accused of racism are compiled, his name appears alongside Covington and Strickland. Dricus du Plessis, the South African middleweight who captured a UFC title in 2024, sparked an international debate about identity during his rise. In March 2023, at a media day ahead of UFC 285, he responded, "Did those belts ever go to Africa? As far as I know, they came to America and New Zealand." He then explained that he and his teammate Cameron Simon breathe African air, wake up in Africa, train in Africa, and are African-born and African-raised. He concluded, "That's an African champion, and that's who I'll be." To many listeners, this sounded like he was implying that Nigerian-born champions Israel Adesanya and Kamaru Usman and Cameroonian Francis Ngannou weren't truly African because they live and train abroad. The comments quickly spread across social media. Du Plessis doubled down in an interview with analyst Dan Hardy, declaring he was the first real African champ. The backlash was swift and passionate. At UFC 290, after winning a fight, Adesanya entered the cage and confronted Du Plessis. He screamed at him and repeatedly used the N-word, making clear he took the comments personally. Francis Ngannou, who had crossed deserts and jungles to escape poverty and political turmoil in Cameroon, argued that Du Plessis could never understand what it meant to be forced from home. Adesanya later elaborated that while he and Ngannou had to leave their countries for opportunity, Du Plessis lives behind the gates of his privileged life in South Africa and wouldn't face the same hardships. Fans fans took sides, with some arguing du Plessis was celebrating being born and trained on the continent, and others accusing him of erasing black African champions. The debate spilled into mainstream African media, where columnists asked why a white South African would be so quick to claim authenticity while downplaying the accomplishments of fighters of color. Du Plessis tried to clarify his comments. He told reporters he never said he was more African than anyone else. He explained that he wanted to bring a UFC belt to the continent because past champions of African descent had lived and trained elsewhere. He argued that his statement was about geography. He was physically living and training in Pretoria and would bring the belt back to Africa rather than leaving it in the United States. In later interviews, he insisted he didn't intend to disrespect Adesanya, Usman, or Ngannou. However, critics noted that his insistence on being the first real African champ belittled the achievements of those champions and ignored structural reasons why many fighters leave Africa. Sports commentators summarized that his comments carried racial undertones and were widely viewed as race-baiting. What many observers found missing from his remarks was any acknowledgement of South Africa's complicated racial past. Du Plessis grew up in Pretoria during the 90s, after the formal end of apartheid, but before meaningful economic change reached many black communities. He is part of the Afrikaans-speaking minority that historically held political power. When he declared himself the real African champion, he seemed oblivious to how that claim might sound coming from someone whose family would have benefited from apartheid structures. Journalists in South Africa pointed out that his statement echoed historic efforts to downplay black identity. Critics asked why he couldn't simply celebrate bringing a belt home without implying that others were less African. Even some white South African fans felt he missed an opportunity to promote unity. In later interviews, he tried to pivot, saying he wanted to inspire kids in Africa to believe they could succeed without emigrating. That nuance was lost in the immediate backlash, but it's part of why his comments ignited such passion. Fighters, like any public figures, carry the weight of their country's history when they speak, whether they mean to or not. The context matters. South Africa has a painful history of apartheid, and the phrase real African can evoke colonial hierarchies. Du Plessis is white and Afrikaans speaking. For him to declare himself the authentic African champion while dismissing champions of color rubbed many the wrong way. On the other hand, some fans argued that he was simply celebrating being born, raised, and trained on the continent. They pointed out that other African champions moved away and sometimes downplayed their origins until it suited them. The debate exposed tensions about identity in global sports. Does living somewhere define you, or does heritage? In this case, Du Plessis' phrasing was clumsy and easily interpreted as erasure. After winning the middleweight title in July 2024, Du Plessis called out Adesanya again and said he was ready to fight in Africa. Adesanya accepted, promising to educate him about privilege. The fight was booked for UFC 305, and the promotion leaned into the feud. Press conferences featured questions about apartheid and identity, and Du Plessis repeatedly insisted he meant no harm. Still, the African champ controversy hung over the bout. It served as a reminder that even in 2025, the legacies of colonialism and migration continue to shape how fighters talk about their roots. Whether Du Plessis intentionally used racially charged language or was simply ignorant, his remarks sparked one of the most passionate debates in MMA about identity and belonging. Mike Perry was once known for his wild knockouts and brash personality, but a 2020 incident revealed a darker side. In July of that year, a video surfaced showing him drunk at a bar in Lubbock, Texas. He got into an argument with an older man, punched the man in the face, and screamed the N-word multiple times as bystanders tried to intervene. ESPN reported that he had previously used the slur on social media and had referred to Tyron Woodley and actor Michael Jai White using the same word. In the video, Perry claimed someone touched him and lashed out. Police were called, but no charges were filed at the time. After the skirmish, he walked out of the bar, yelling racial slurs at patrons and staff. The clip went viral and prompted immediate condemnation from fans and media. The UFC said it was troubled by the incident and announced that Perry would undergo treatment and counseling. In a statement, the promotion said his behavior was not reflective of its values and that he would not be offered another fight until he completed a program. Perry later posted an apology on social media. He wrote that he wanted to be a better role model for his his family, apologized to his sponsors and the UFC, and said he would seek help for alcohol abuse and anger issues. He mentioned his fiancée and their unborn son, and promised to be better all around. Critics noted that while he acknowledged needing help, he did not specifically address the racial slurs he used. He focused on his drinking and temper rather than the underlying racism. Perry's language didn't come out of nowhere. In the years leading up to the bar incident, he had used the N-word in interviews and online, often claiming he could use it because he had a black ancestor. In 2016, he told a reporter that his heritage made him allowed to say the word. He doubled down when criticized, saying he grew up around black friends who didn't mind. Those rationalizations fell apart when he was confronted with video evidence of him casually hurling slurs at strangers while intoxicated. Instead of grappling with the racial issue, he focused on getting sober. Some of his supporters took his side, arguing that he meant no harm and that the reaction was overblown because he was white. Others noted that the UFC's willingness to tolerate slurs until violence was involved sent a dangerous message. After completing counseling, Perry left the promotion and reinvented himself in bare-knuckle boxing. He has teased a UFC return, but so far nothing has materialized. The fact that his racial slurs aren't his primary storyline anymore speaks to the rapid news cycle in combat sports. Scandals fade, but the hurt left behind by those words doesn't vanish for everyone. Perry's case remains a snapshot of what happens when a fighter crosses from edgy trash talk into racist attacks, and raises questions about why the promotion acted only when violence accompanied the slurs. Ricky Simon found himself in the crosshairs of a racism debate in June 2025 during a fight night card in Atlanta. As he pressed his opponent Cameron Smotherman, a black bantamweight, against the cage, Simon shouted, "You're under arrest!" Smotherman immediately turned to him and said, "That's racist." The exchange was captured by microphones and quickly clipped for social media. Within hours, fans were arguing over what Simon meant. Some interpreted the phrase as a reference to policing and the disproportionate arrest of black people. Others argued that Simon was just playing off Smotherman's surname or trying to signal that he was controlling the fight. In his post-fight interview, Simon denied any racist intent. He said he hadn't considered how the words might be perceived and apologized to Smotherman if he felt disrespected. The debate mostly unfolded in comment sections and podcasts because mainstream outlets didn't publish in-depth articles about the exchange. Without more reporting, there is insufficient public sourcing as of December 2025 to evaluate the full context. Smotherman later said he accepted Simon's apology, but still felt the remark was unnecessary. While the incident didn't have the scale of the Covington or McGregor controversies, it shows how quickly fans will call out perceived racial references. Fighters are increasingly aware that one ill-thought quip can spark a social media firestorm. Simon hopes fans will remember his wins more than a line he claims was misinterpreted. Did we forget any UFC fighters who have made racist comments in the past? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section, and before you leave, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to MMA Rivals so you don't miss the next ones.